Okay, so can you see the slide? Is the slide visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So if you recollect, in the last class, we were doing an introduction to control systems, and we are continuing with the introduction module today as well. So sorry, I had, can you still see the slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I had in the last class, basically, I mean, given you certain application areas where control systems are used. Now, basically, today we are going to go into something which is going to deal with what we call a block diagram of a control system, and of which now, first of all, we are going to study a very simplistic model of the driving system of an automobile. So if we consider a car which is moving on the road, and we consider a very simplistic model of such a car, right? So here now, we have the engine, along with the vehicle, is represented by using this simple block over here, right? And now the output of such a car would be the speed or velocity, right? So now, I mean, over here for this particular model, I am not taking into consideration any variations in the directional orientation of the car. We are going to be considering only speed as the output variable, right? So basically, from this block, we have this output variable, which is also sometimes known as the controlled variable, and that is the speed in our case. That is this example of an automobile, right? Now, how do we change the speed of the car? Naturally, some input has to be applied to the system. Now, how is input applied to this particular system as far as the speed is concerned? Naturally, a force will be applied by the driver, whoever it is, on the accelerator or the brake, and accordingly, through the linkages and then the carburetor, etc., the the engine, the amount of fuel is going to be sent and burnt rather, and as a result of which the vehicle is going to have an increase in the speed or the decrease in the speed. So as far as the model that we are considering over here is concerned, it is very simplistic. We've put all those things, that is the accelerator pedal, the linkages, carburetor, in fact, even if you have the brakes, all those will come into this block over here. And basically, as far as the input signal is concerned, the input signal over here is the force which is being applied by your foot on the accelerator. So the force is the input signal over here, which is also known as the command signal. I'm assuming that all of you are familiar with such terms as a command signal or input and output, because you have already studied system theory, or a bit of it, at least half of it was covered in the subject signals and systems, right? So here now, as far as this model is concerned, this is the block diagram representation of the very simplistic model of an automobile, where we have two blocks, one of which shows you the accelerator, pedal, linkages, the carburetor. The other has the engine and vehicle itself, right? So the input, that is the force, is applied on the accelerator, and via the linkages and the carburetor, it goes to the engine. I mean, the signal goes to the engine, right? And then the vehicle speed is increased or decreased. So here now, in such a system, the speed is the output and the input is the force. But now, I mean, say for example, I mean, there is a driver or some person is sitting inside the car. In such a model that you see over here in this block diagram, is there any means of knowing what the speed is, whether it is the desirable speed, whether the speed is above the value that you want, or whether it is below the value that you want? There is no means of knowing what the speed is, because we have not showed any sensors over here, sensors or measuring instruments which are actually going to measure the speed, right? Also now, if we want that the force over here, the force that is the input command which is being applied, is going to change according to the speed. Say for example, if the speed is higher than what we want, then what will happen, what is required rather, it is required that the force on the accelerator is released, it is decreased by a bit. But in this particular block representation, we find that there is no connection whatsoever with the speed that is between the speed and the input, that is the force which is being applied to the accelerator over here. So such a model or a block diagram, the block diagram that you see over here, represents what we call an open loop system. Open loop means that there is no connection between the output and the input side, right? So there is no means by which some action can be taken on the basis of the value of the output variable. So this is called an open loop system, right? So what will be the consequence of such an open loop system? Naturally, I mean, there will be no means of knowing whether the speed is high. And I mean, say, for example, somebody is applying the force, they would keep on applying the force, increasing the force, and the speed would keep on increasing. It's likely to be like that because the person who is applying the force has no means of knowing the value of the speed, right? So this is an open loop system, and in such a system, naturally, because there is no means of knowing what the output value is and taking some action on the basis of that knowledge, this will have serious consequences in the sense that naturally it is going to cause an accident, right? So now, I mean, this is what we call driving without any regard for the consequences. If accident occurs, it occurs. But naturally now, I mean, if we were actually interested in the consequences also, then what would we have done? We would have naturally had to read the speed or sense the speed and take some action on the basis of that value, right? So that is actually also known as the feedback signal, right? So if, say, for example, in the same model, a modification is made in this form, then we see over here in this diagram, you still have the this block, that is the accelerator, pedal linkages, carburetor, and the other block with the engine vehicle, and the output is the speed. It's not written over here, but it's the speed. Now there is a desired speed that we want. Remember that I told you that we are dealing with a very simplistic model. Only the variation of speed is of interest to us. We are not, for the time being, we are not bothered about the directional orientation. We are assuming that, okay, it is going to, I mean, keep on the road and the road is straight and so on. So, I mean, that portion is not assumed within the model. Some assumptions are made that those are not going to influence the model. So now, if there is a desired speed that must be maintained, it is desirable that the output is going to have that value, meaning, say, for example, if the, I mean, desired speed is, say, 30 kilometers per hour, the output has to be, output has to be 30 kilometers per hour. But in this model now, you find that in this particular block diagram, you find that there is a sensing instrument in the form of a speedometer, from where the driver, using his eyes and brain, actually can look at the speedometer, and his brain is going to do the processing that is going to act as the controller in this particular model. It is going to take, the person is going to take corrective action based on the output value that he sees, meaning the speedometer, if he sees that, okay, it is going at 80 kilometers per hour. So naturally now the driver's eye and brain will give an instruction to the leg muscles so that the force being applied on the accelerator is released, right? So basically over here, now similarly, I mean, if the output variable, that is the speed, is lower than the desired speed you can see is written over here on this side. I hope you can see my cursor moving. So if not, let me know. I mean, again, try to go, I mean, stop the sharing and then again take corrective action if required, if you cannot see. So now the output value, if it is, say, for example, below the desired value, then again the driver, I think people are just, I'll take a moment to admit some persons who may be waiting, but this is not really something I would like. Okay. it is very difficult to actually admit people who are coming late after the class starts. That's why I give an extra 2 minutes, because otherwise what will happen is I have to get out of the slideshow mode. I hope the slide is visible. If not, please let me know. So over here now, what is happening is that this person over here is acting as the link in the form of a visual link. He's looking at the speedometer, and then via his eyes and processing taking place in the brain, the signal is being given to the leg muscle such that the force is decreased or increased according to the requirement, depending on the output value. So this is an example of what we call a closed loop system. So in all closed loop systems, we would be having such a signal which is linking the output to the input side, and accordingly some corrective action is being taken. So this link over here that we see, we'll see the formal terms for that. You are also, I mean, to a certain extent, maybe familiar with some of these terms. This link over here is known as the feedback, right? So this example is an example of a closed loop system. So the same system of an automobile, actually, I mean, for a closed loop system, you can understand it can be, it is going to work. It can be made to work in a much better way, because over here the possibility of accidents as far as the speed increase is concerned, speed increase or decrease is concerned, that is reduced to a large extent, meaning that when the output variable value is over the limit, then a corrective action will be taken via, because this person will be able to read that value, send a signal such that the say the acceleration is the accelerometer is I mean released, and the acceleration is reduced, so that velocity decreases, and vice versa, meaning that if it is the output is having a lower value, then action will be taken such that it decreases the value, sorry, in lower value it is going to increase. Okay, so this link that you see over here is known as the feedback, and such a system is called a closed loop system because of this, the presence of this loop. The loop has been closed, we see. So now we will go to another example, an example of economic inflation dynamics. So I hope you can see the slide number 29. If not, let me know. So here again, we are going to consider a very simplistic example, but it is going to serve some purpose for us, for the, I mean, as far as the examples are concerned. So here, of course, you can understand that the economic inflation dynamics is not a physical system. It is an abstract system. You can, I mean, understand what is going to happen and all that, but you cannot touch it or feel it like that, right? So now, I mean, over here, let us consider this portion, that is, we are sort of dealing or speaking about a particular industry, right? And we are going to study the economics of that industry, of course, in a very simplistic fashion. So now let us say that, I mean, there is a product which the industry is producing. So if the product cost is somehow increased, I'll start from here. Of course, I'll describe the whole of the loop, but starting from here will help me a bit. So if, say, for example, I mean, I look at the product cost, if for some reason or the other, the cost of the product increases, and this is just a factor K2 that is written over here, but say the workers who are working in the industry have to buy the same product. Say, for example, I mean, toothpaste is being produced by that industry, and the cost of toothpaste has gone up. And also the let us assume, for the time being, for simplistic, I mean, realization of the same thing, let us assume that the workers have to buy the same toothpaste, no other brand is available for the time being, right? So what will happen if the product cost increases? The cost of living of the workers is going to increase, because within the same wages they have to buy the toothpaste at a higher cost, so their cost of living is going to increase, right? So now if the cost of living increases, then what will happen? They are, say, they now have to spend 120 rupees instead of the 100 rupees that they were spending earlier, right? So now what will happen? They will have a dissatisfaction factor, which is denoted by the small d over here. Dissatisfaction factor, sorry, arising out of what? Dissatisfaction arising out of the fact that the cost of living has increased, whereas the wages have remained the same. Till now we haven't spoken about the wages, but naturally, I mean, if they have to buy something, they have to buy it out of their own means. Their own means means that the wages that they were earning will be spent to buy that product. So there will be a dissatisfaction that the workers will be having, right? So when they have dissatisfaction, what will happen is that, let us start from here, the workers had some initial wages to start with, right? So say they had their wage was 100 rupees. Okay. So now, I mean, what has happened is that the cost of living has increased and they have spent 120 rupees or so. So what has happened is that dissatisfaction has arisen. So there is a dissatisfaction factor. So what will happen? They will actually push for a wage increment. They will agitate or somehow speak with the management, etc., etc., and they will want a wage increment. So now, if the management yields to that, what will happen is that they will be given an increment. So given an increment means what? There were some initial wages was there, and say for example, if their wages have increased by 20 rupees, so the initial wage was 10 rupee, was 100 rupees. Now it has increased by 20 rupees. So now the present wage becomes 120 rupees. Okay, so fine, the wages of the workers has increased. You can see the positive sign on both, meaning that initial wage plus the wage increment is going to give you the present wage. Fine. So now the wage has become 120 rupees. So fine. As far as the workers are concerned, they have become happy. But now the industry is going to have to pay them the wages, right? So the industry, how will the industry be able to pay the increased amount of wages to the workers? They have to pay from somewhere, isn't it? I mean, their cost of running, living, etc. Running the cost of raw material, etc. That has not decreased. So from where will the industry give the increment to the workers? They have no other way but to increase the product cost. So what the industry will do is that in order to pay for the incremented wages, they will increase the product cost, right? Now, the moment the product cost increases, what will happen? The workers will have to buy the same product and their cost of living goes up further, right? So again, cost of living going up means what? Dissatisfaction will be there. They will want a wage increment. If the wage increment is actually allowed, then what will happen is that the present wages will go still further up. So now in this process, you find that basically here, this is of course a closed loop system again, because you see that there is a feedback over here. However, the feedback over here is a positive feedback. Positive feedback means what? The initial wage that you see over here, with that, this feedback signal is going to be added and you get the output of this summer over here. So here, basically, this is an example of a system which has positive feedback. Now, as a result of positive feedback, you will see that is there any end to this this whole situation, meaning that the cost of living will keep on increasing, and that will actually keep on increasing the dissatisfaction. That will keep on, I mean, if the management yields, the present wages will again increase in the present wages have to be paid by the industry. So they will do so by increasing the product cost. So this is a cycle which goes on and on and on, meaning that in such a system, if you just plot the, say, cost of living as such versus time or something, it is going to keep on increasing and increasing and increasing, right? So such a system is actually an unstable system. It will, of course, I mean, do stability analysis to a large extent. I mean, sort of, you are going to analyze things and in this particular system, no dynamics have not been actually shown. It's just sort of conceptual and abstract model, abstract blocks are given over here. But nevertheless, you can understand that, I mean, the cost of living is going to be pushed up and up and up, resulting in economic inflation, right? So this is the system is called the economic inflation dynamics. And you can as well understand here we've taken the very simplistic model of a single industry, but this is the situation which actually arises in the financial situation of the country itself. So inflation goes up and up due to this simple reason. And the system itself is not a stable system. So you might as well understand that it's going to go up and up and up if, I mean, the wages are incremented in this fashion, right? So this particular example is a very typical example of a positive feedback system. Because of the positive sign over here, it's called a positive feedback system. In all practical systems that we would usually encounter, we would see that the feedback is a negative one. It will be negative over here, which will actually act as a corrective action. So basically, I mean, in case you have a negative feedback over here, then that negative feedback is going to have the action of correcting whatever wrong has happened in this wrong, meaning that, say for example, if the cost of living had gone up, it will decrease, gone down, it would increase, but not in this system. This system is a positive feedback system. If it were a negative feedback system, like say for example the automobile example that I showed you, here of course the signs have not been shown, that block is not shown explicitly. Block meaning the summary I have not shown with the signs plus and minus, but you can understand that here a corrective action is what is taking place. So the output, if it increases, corrective action will decrease it, and vice versa, because this is a negative feedback system. So as I stated, most of the systems that we deal with are going to be having negative feedback. One exception to this is the economic inflation dynamics, which is a positive feedback system. There are other such examples as well. So you can try to find out more such examples. Usually in class I ask, but here, I mean, very difficult to ask, because if I ask and nobody answers, then I keep on sitting without any action. It's sort of embarrassing. But in case you think about it, you will be able to come up with more such examples of positive feedback systems. Very few of them, but they are around you. On the other hand, examples of negative feedback systems are plenty, right? Most of the systems that we would be studying would be having negative feedback. Now, coming back to back meaning, because you have done signals and systems in your second year, we will go through a brief and quick recap of the concept of a system, as well as some related concepts, meaning the input, output, and so on. So if you recollect, a system is a coordinate unit of elements performing a specific function. That is the textbook definition that you would be finding in most of the standard textbooks, right? Now it produces an output corresponding to a given input according to some rule. So as far as the system is concerned, the system may be physically an electrical system, or a mechanical system, a hydraulic system, pneumatic system, chemical system, analog or digital, or any other elements, devices, or processes or interacting combination thereof together would be considered as a system. Incidentally, who can tell me what is pneumatic? What does this term mean, pneumatic? What happened? I don't know. I don't believe that. It is related to the pressure, right? So, fluid pressure, meaning either your gaseous pressure or liquid pressure. In most cases, or more often, it is referred to. It is used to refer to the air pressure, that is gaseous pressure. I mean, okay. So anyway, system physically may be having different natures, such as these. However, a system is not limited to physical ones. I had already stated that in the last class as well as in today's class. That is, the concept of a system can be applied to abstract dynamic phenomena, such as those encountered in economics or some biological system, or such systems also are called systems, but they are not physical in nature. Now coming to a control system, right? So over here now you find a block diagram, a very simplistic block diagram, of course, but it's drawn with a single block in which you find the words control system written. Of course, the output arrow, outgoing arrow, represents what we call the controlled output, denoted as C. These notations vary from book to book. So I mean, in some books you find the output having the symbol Y, notation Y. In some other books, I believe BC Co gives you the symbol C. So whatever you use, I mean, provided it is a standard one, there is no problem as far as I am concerned, and I mean, people would not be having problems, but you should be consistent in what you are doing. Nevertheless, now the controlled input, because it is controlled C for that. Okay, so controlled output is denoted as C. The reference input is denoted as R. R means reference input. Okay, so now over here in this control system, you find also that there is another signal which is being input to this system, and that is denoted, or rather termed as disturbance. So now, I mean, it is essential for us to understand, as meaning control engineers, to understand the difference between reference input and disturbance signals. And mind you, I mean, though it sounds sort of trivial, ma'am, why can't you understand which one is disturbance and which one is input? I assure you that if you are really working with systems, there would be times when you yourself would be facing a lot of confusion regarding which signal is the desired signal, which is the disturbance signal. But I mean, of course, it can be, you can differentiate between them if you have basic knowledge about how to define what a disturbance is. Well, we'll come to that. Let us read it from the slide first. A control system is, in general, a combination of elements or subsystems which tend to maintain a quantity or a set of quantities termed output, suitably related to another quantity or set of quantities termed input. So what we are saying over here is that this block that you see may not be a single equipment, or it may not be a single component that we are seeing over here. Rather, it is an interconnection of subsystems. Okay, in general, whatever is within those subsystems are together taken, and I mean, the whole block represents the overall system. At least as far as this representation is concerned, it is very simplistic. So we have the whole system coming within this, sorry, the dynamics of the whole system coming within this block, and then we have the output going out of the block and the input coming into that block, right? So the system in general will actually define the relation between the output and the input. Okay, so defining the relation between output and input means that, of course, the dynamics over here would be defined and described by the means of mathematical expressions. That is understood. But I mean, you will get the relation if you look at the model of the system, right? So now coming to the thing that I pointed out in the last slide, that is the difference between the reference input versus the disturbance. Both the input, that's the reference input, and the disturbance input are inputs to the system. Okay, whether we like it or not, the disturbance also affects the system. So it is an input to the system. However, there is a, I mean, subtle difference between the two quantities, the two signals which are influencing the system. So the reference input is essentially a signal or a set of signals in some form which acts upon the system in such a way that the response at the output takes place in a desired manner. So this, I mean, these last two words are very, very important. The reference input is essentially applied such that the output changes in a desired manner, because ultimately we want our system to be performing according to our requirements such that we are able to do something with that output, right? So naturally, we want the system to be operating in a desired manner, and for that matter, it means that the output should be, I mean, changing in a desired manner. The response should be a desired one. So the signal which is applied such that the output changes in a desired manner, output response is as desired, that signal is called the reference input being applied to the system. On the other hand, a disturbance is also an input to the system, but it is a signal which tends to adversely affect the value of the output of a system. So, of course, as far as disturbances are concerned, there are two broad categories into which disturbances can be divided. One being the external disturbances and the other being the internal disturbances. So now, if I just come back to the previous slide, external disturbances are the ones which are shown over here, meaning that, a single arrow is what you see, of course, but disturbances, external disturbances would refer to such disturbances which are, explicitly affecting the system due to some external factor. Maybe the environmental condition is changing, maybe there is a gust of wind which is influencing the directional orientation and such factors, right? On the other hand, disturbances can not only be external signals as shown over here, but disturbances can also be related to the parametric variations within the system itself, meaning that if, say, for example, the value of some component is changing during the experiment or during the operation, right? So what will happen is that the parameter value is going to, there's the cursor. Parameter value is going to change during the operation. That is internal to the system. It is also a disturbance because it is going to adversely affect your output. But such a disturbance would be known as, an internal disturbance, because it is not due to an external signal which is affecting the system. Rather, it is a parametric change which takes place within the system itself. But nevertheless, both external as well as internal disturbances are in general termed as disturbances. Often you find also the term noise being used for an external disturbance. That is, a standard thing that people do, but that, is also an external disturbance. Noises are external disturbances which affect the system. On the other hand, parametric changes which are taking place within the system are termed as internal disturbances. Now coming to open loop system. So in an open loop system, an input known as the reference input, this one, is directly applied to the controller, often through an amplifier. So okay, let me tell you regarding about these block diagrams that you see over here first. The top diagram and the bottom diagram are actually the same meaning that you see it in a different fashion, but basically in the top diagram, the cursor is vanishing. Yes. So in the top diagram, you find this whole block written as control system, and within this control system you would be having your plant, you would be having your controller, amplifier, or any other component that you may be having in the system. Together is taken within this block, that is control system, right? In the second diagram over here, you find that the control system block has been not shown as a single block. Rather, some of the components or parts that make up the control system are shown separately. So you can see the plant and the controller and the amplifier, which is shown separately over here. Now, what happens in a system is that by application of a reference input, we try to get a desired output, right? So now often what happens is that, the reference input that we have has to be amplified. So amplifier is shown explicitly. It may be that no amplifier is required, in which case the amplifier gain is going to be taken equal to 1. So it's a general thing that we have put over here. In the case that it is not required, amplifier is not required, the gain would be equal to 1, right? So the reference input via the amplifier goes to the controller. Now the controller over here is of importance in the sense that the controller is the component or the whatever, it could be a hardware or a software, it could be a simple program, whatever. The output of the controller is going to send us some signal to the plant. Now the controller is going to generate the signal which is going to make any changes in the plant dynamics, or rather not dynamics, plant response, I should say. Okay, so basically the controller generates the input signal for the plant, and the plant accordingly has an output, a command a controlled output, or an output as we call it. Okay, so basically the controller in an open loop system would be acting on the basis of only the reference signal via the amplifier, of course. So on the basis of only the reference signal value, the controller will generate a signal and send it to the plant. On the other hand, if we will of course come to it, we will see that in case of closed loop system, the controller had a more serious task to perform, in the sense that the controller actually looks at not only the reference input, but also it takes the controlled output, and then comparing between the two, it would have to give the a particular signal to the plant such that a desired output is obtained. So in the closed loop system, the controller would be having a more serious job of making a comparison between the reference input and the controlled output. However, in the case of an open loop system that we are studying over here, the controller is only going to, over here, the job that it would be performing is have to change the nature of the signal. Say, for example, if the reference input is applied in terms of an electrical signal, maybe a pressure has to be applied to the plant, some valve has to be opened. So, I mean, basically the controller would be, in such an open loop system, would be only performing the objective of generating the plant input on the basis of what the input is, right? So in an open loop system, an input known as reference input is directly applied to the controller, often through an amplifier, and an output known as the controlled output is obtained. It explains the diagram over here. The input to the controller is in no way affected by the controlled output. So that is of importance as far as an open loop system is concerned. The input to the controller is in no way affected by what I have at the controlled output. Okay, so see, if it is large, if it is small, the controller has no means of knowing and taking any action on the basis of the controlled output, right? That is as far as an open loop system is concerned. On the other hand, in a closed loop system, what we would be having is that there would be a signal from the output side to this block. So basically, a comparison is going to be made over here, and a signal is going to be generated, which is going to go to the control elements. So now, I mean, we have in front of us what is called a closed loop control system, but this is a simplistic form, simple form, in which case the feedback over here, the feedback element is has a gain. Feedback element has not been shown like this. A separate block has not been used, because even if a block is used, the gain would be unity within that block. So this is a simple closed loop control system. However, I'm going to go to the next slide, where we would be seeing a more general case. Now, for this, I will just show you one thing. That is, just note that over here, the output of this summation block, summer block as we call it, is a difference between the reference input and the output signal. So basically you find a plus on this side. So R minus C, that is C is coming from there, is going to give you the error. So if we define the error or denote the error rather as epsilon, epsilon is going to be equal to R minus C. Simple, I mean subtraction of the output from the input is going to give you the error. And that error is going to be influencing the rest of the actions. However, now we come to the more general system, which is this one. So this diagram again shows you a control system, which is a closed loop control system. In this case, however, we have a generalization. Is the cursor going? We have a generalization in the sense that here we have shown that the feedback path also has an element which is non-unity in general. So in general, the feedback path element is denoted as k suffix f. It is not essentially a pure gain. It may have dynamics. It may be say 1 by s plus 1 or whatever. I mean, s by s plus 1, s plus 2, s plus 5, etc., etc. So it will be having some sort of dynamics, like the plant will be having a transfer function. The feedback path element will also be having a transfer function in general, right? I'm saying this because the notation is k suffix f, but it's not a pure gain that k denotes. It denotes a feedback path element with dynamics. Now coming to the overall closed loop system, you see that we can identify certain things. The controlled output C is here and the reference input R is on this side. Fine. Now there is a dotted line, a dotted block which is shown. Let me just retrieve the cursor. Yeah. There is a dotted box that is shown over here. So the dotted box actually overall denotes what we call a controller. So if you try to compare this with the controller in the previous slide, not the previous one, but the one before that, that is in the closed loop, in the slide with the open loop system, we had a controller block. This whole block from here to there, that is whatever is enclosed within this dotted red block, denotes the controller. Okay. So as far as the controller is concerned, it has number one, the control elements inside it, as well as a summer. Summer means a summation block, which is going to add or subtract signals which are coming into it. So as far as this controller is concerned, you find what are the inputs to the controller. The inputs to the controller are number one, you find the reference input going inside. Also, you find that the feedback signal, that is the control output via the feedback element, gives you the feedback signal. So the feedback signal is going into this red block, right? So the inputs to the controller are the reference input and the feedback signal. What are the outputs of the controller? The output of the controller here is the input to the plant, right? So it is the signal which is going to make changes in the plant. It's going to influence the plant and make it respond in a desirable manner, right? So basically, the output of the controller is also the input to the plant. Now, as far as the overall block diagram is concerned, you can understand certain things which are written over here yourself. So this, block, that is the control elements and the plant together make up what is known as the forward path element, right? So they come in the forward path as far as this block diagram is concerned. This yellow block over here is what is known as the feedback path element. As I told you, this in general will have some dynamics, okay? The feedback path element as well. Also, you find that there is this block, not block actually, this, you can say summer, which is actually, it is known as the error detector or error sensor for obvious reasons, because it is going to sense the error in between the reference input and the feedback signal and generate the difference in between these two. Now here, of course, I'm not terming the output of this summer as error. It may be either the error or it is called the actuating signal. Now, which case is it going to be called an error? It's going to be called an error when Kf is equal to 1, meaning that the case when we have a unity feedback, in that case, epsilon will be equal to R minus 1 into C. So R minus C, that is input minus output, is actually the error. On the other hand, for any non-unity value of kf, including if it has dynamics, the error will not, the epsilon will not be called an error, it will be called the actuating signal. Because error, we say, is difference between output and input, or input and output. But that is not going to be the case, meaning you're not going to have difference between input and only output. Over here, we are going to have the feedback signal itself, which is consisting of something multiplied by the output. So here, in general, this is called the actuating signal. In some books, you may find the term actuating error. Whatever, it is not exactly the error, but it is the actuating signal. Now, why is it called an actuating signal? Because ultimately, this signal is going to go to the control elements, which will generate the signal, which is going to actuate the plant. Actuate the plant means it's going to bring about some change in the dynamics, or yes, some change in the plant itself, such that some response is obtained. Okay, so some change in the behavior of the plant, I mean. So basically, you would be having the control elements over here. Control elements have to be chosen depending on your choice of controller parameters, and the nature of the control elements as well as the values have to be chosen or designed by the control system engineer. But whatever be the control elements, basically overall this red block is called the controller, right? So let us see now the slides one after the other. It's a continuation of the same thing, and some things written down so that you can understand better. So the corrective signal which drives the control element, that means this one, okay, is derived from some kind of comparison between the input variable and the control variable. So some kind of comparison between the input variable and the output variable, right? That some kind of has been used because it's not a difference between the input variable and the output variable, which it would have been if we had a unity feedback. But in general, it is a non-unity one that we are studying. So in the general case, basically, we would be having the difference between the input signal and some sort of um, some signal which is derived from the controlled output, right? So R minus KFC is equal to epsilon. And this epsilon is being called over here as the corrective signal, because now let us suppose for the time being that somehow, okay, just to simplify life for us a bit, let us say that, let us assume that KF is equal to 1. Okay, so we have a unity feedback. Okay, so my epsilon becomes equal to R minus 1 into C, which is R minus C. Difference between the reference input and the output is what we have. Now, if, say, for example, in the hypothetical case, your controlled output has become exactly equal to the reference input. So what will happen to the error signal? What will be the value of the error signal? What happened? If R is equal to C, what will happen to the error signal? If KF is equal to 1, you will have a zero error. So zero error would imply that a zero signal is being input to the control elements. So a zero over here, a zero signal is what you are going to get as far as the plant is concerned. So what will happen is that if, I mean, the controlled output was at a particular value, no further corrective action has to be taken. Say, for example, if the position is at a particular value and that is equal to the desired value, then no further change in the position will be required. So naturally, I mean, the driving signal over here will become equal to 0. So you can see that because this is a corrective signal, this corrective signal will have a non-zero value in so far as, I mean, as long as there exists a difference between the input and the output. When the output becomes equal to the input, or if we have, I mean, in the specific case of kf equal to 1, or if it's not equal to 1, then your output into kf becomes equal to r. That's the case that I'm speaking of. In such a case, the corrective signal will be equal to 0, and no further corrective action will be required. And that is the way all feedback systems with a negative feedback act, right? So when we have a negative feedback like this corrective signal will be the driving signal for the plant. If there exists no difference between the two, R and KFC, then the corrective signal would become equal to 0. Okay, coming to the next slide. Thus, in general, when the control element which itself drives the plant is driven by some functions of a difference of the reference input and a fraction of the controlled output, the overall system is called a closed loop control system. So what we have stated over here is that when we have this particular arrangement, meaning that there is an error detector, and that error detector takes the difference between the reference signal and some derived form of the controlled output, and compares between these two signals, and gives out a corrective signal. In all systems where such an action is what the system depends on, in all such systems, these systems are called closed loop control systems, right? So this signal over here, which is called the feedback signal, is very important, and it is directly coming from the output. So output via a feedback element is going to generate the feedback signal, and by comparing between the reference input and the feedback signal, an actuating signal is going to be generated. Actuating signal or corrective signal, or whatever you call it, is going to be generated, and on the basis of this signal which is being input to the control element, the plant input is going to be generated. If there is a 0 input over here, 0 signal is going to be influencing the plant. On the other hand, if there is some signal over here, then the control elements will accordingly now generate the input to the plant, and the plant will act in such a fashion that corrective action is taking place, and the controlled output and the system as a whole has a response which is a desirable response as far as that particular system is concerned. Okay, so some things we've already described are on the subsequent slide. If kf is equal to 1, the system is said to be a unity feedback system. So if this is equal to 1, it will be called a unity feedback system. The function of the error sensor or comparator, okay, so error sensor is also a comparator because it compares between these signals. The function is to give an output which is equal to this one, which is equal to the input minus the quantity kf into c. Since this quantity is in some form or measure of the error, this subsystem is known as the error sensor or error detector. This subsystem, meaning this one, is also sometimes referred to as the error sensor or error detector, right? I've already told you these things verbally, but I'm just going through what is written. As the error drives the plant to give an output, so this signal will go to the control elements, and the control elements will generate the signal which is going to drive the plant. So the error is going to, in effect, drive the plant. Closed loop systems are known as error actuated systems because the moment this signal is equal to 0, there's no further actuation of the plant, right? Because the plant input becomes 0. So in such systems, that is in closed loop systems are also called error actuated systems. If the error becomes 0 means what? R becomes equal to kf into c. Then we would find that the error becomes 0, and in such case no further corrective action is required as far as the plant is concerned. Okay, so here now note the negative sign in this system, which makes it a negative feedback system. On the other hand, positive feedback system we've seen in economic inflation dynamics. Okay, So whenever you have feedback, you have to look at the sign over here, sign of the feedback, whether it's a negative feedback or a positive feedback is of importance. All error-driven systems would be error-driven or error-actuated systems, as they are called. They would be essentially having a negative feedback, because the difference in between the input and this signal, feedback signal, is what is being defined as the error or actuating signal. On the other hand, there may be systems with positive feedback as well. Both physical systems as well as abstract systems may be having positive feedback. I'll actually not go to the regulator in today's class. I will I'll just do this. Okay, let me do this portion and then go to the analysis. So now we are actually going to look at a specific type of control system, which is known as a regulator. Now you would have studied regulators in your second years in some subject or the other. Now control systems, as far as control systems are concerned, basically in control systems, whenever the system is designed such that there is a correspondence, or rather, let me just show you there's a diagram over here. So this one over here, now I'll explain with the help of a block diagram. That's why I was just trying to go to the previous slide, but it's here, no problem. So now let us say we have a system which is like this. Ignore the transfer functions written within the blocks. Okay, for the time being, we have a system with an input, then we have an error detector generating a signal which goes to the forward path element, and then the output. And there is also a feedback element, so feeding back the negative feedback. So that's the general system that I was speaking of, right? So now, if, say, for example, we want that the output will remain at a fixed value. Okay, so what will we do for that? We will try to keep the input also at a fixed value, and the system will give us the output as a fixed value, right? So now, if for some reason the output value has changed, what are those some reasons? It may be that some parametric change has taken place within the system. It may be some external disturbance has influenced the system such that the output has changed, right? Say, because of some reason, if the output changes, then a regulator is a system which will take corrective action such that the output is brought back to its preset value. Preset value meaning that, say, for example, if I want the output value to be at say 12 volts, and I have put in 12 volts as my reference input, right? So the output will remain at 12 volts. Now, for some reason, the 12 volts has changed to 12.3. So now, as far as a regulator system is concerned, a regulator system is one which is going to act such that corrective action is going to be taking place such that if the output signal has changed, the system will have the property of bringing back the output to its preset value. So if the desired value is 12 volts over here and this has gone to 12.3, the rest of the dynamics of the system should be such that corrective action will be taken and so on, such that the output will be brought back from the 12.3 volts to again 12 volts. So that is what a regulator would be achieving. Okay, so let us see what is written over there. Control systems which are designed for the specific purpose of maintaining a correspondence between an output or control variable and an input or reference variable under varying conditions of load, changes of system parameters, and other disturbances, while the input either remains at a constant value or at most changes relatively infrequently, are known as regulators. So what we are saying is that the input is kept at a constant value or very near to a constant value, or at most can very infrequently, maybe it changes from one value to another, but most of the time it remains at the constant value. Under that condition, we want that the output would also be equal to the input value, input meaning the desired input value. If there are any changes in the output value, then the output has to be brought back to the predetermined value, preset value, preset value meaning the value which it is supposed to be at. So the system by itself will be having the dynamics such that that objective is attained. We will go to a detailed study of the model of a regulator system, but not today. This is of course the introduction module, so we are just going to touch upon it today. We will be studying a voltage regulator in details, how it works, what the dynamics is as far as the your system model is concerned, and so on, and then see where whether it performs the objective for which it is designed, but not today. Okay, so if the external disturbances that are affecting the system, such a system meaning the regulator system, are negligible, the regulator may be operated in the open loop. What is being said is that if basically there is no reason why the output changes, meaning that if the external disturbances are negligible, means what? Nothing is adversely affecting your output. In that case, naturally, feedback is not required. You can also have the system operating in the open loop. However, this situation is an utopian situation. Utopian situation means that it is almost never going to be the case that there are no external disturbances. So in all regulators, you would have to essentially have a feedback which is going to take corrective action such that the output remains at the desired value without without changing, irrespective of the fact that external disturbances or factors are affecting the system as well as the output signal. The output signal has to be kept at the desired value, right? So I will be ending over here today, because the next slide, as you saw, is a comparison between the open loop and closed loop systems, which I will start in a fresh class. Quite a few slides over there. I'll just take the attendances. But before that, I will first of all stop the recording. And also stop the sharing.